Okay, start with one Walgreens standard skeleton, and what I did was I removed that screw right there just below the rib cage, and the spine will actually separate right there. There's probably one or two more screws in the back that have to be removed. Once you have your skeleton separated, I went up and I bought a broom handle from Home Depot, and I cut it to the approximate size I was going to need, which turned out to be 14.5 inches. This piece of broom handle is then inserted into the bottom of the spine up towards the skull. Here you can see the broom handle extending up into the spine area. I used a couple of the screws that I pulled out in order to separate the skeleton and put those in the back side of the skeleton going into the broom handle to help hold him in place. This is a picture of the bracket that I fashioned to make the skeleton pivot. I used two pieces of L bracket and then drilled a hole through them and drilled a hole through the broom handle and just stuck a nail through there so that the skeleton could pivot. The next thing I had to do was cut the spine a little bit above the pelvis and separate it. What I did is I measured from where the broom handle enters the spinal column and cut a piece long enough to cover this section of the broom handle down to the pivot area, and then I split it up the back, and it just snaps over the broom handle to help hide it. Okay, and here we have a standard Rainbird pop-up sprinkler head. Sprinkler head pops out. It's got a 3-inch pop-up, and I went to Home Depot, got the fittings I needed so that I could get air into the bottom of the sprinkler valve and open it up. I removed the head from the pop-up, drilled a hole in it, and put an eye bolt in there, and that'll be what I used for my swivel. I ran into a problem. These things are designed to leak, but it was really excessive. The way I solved it was I filled the head with caulk, and that didn't work real good. So then with the head removed, I put a piece of plastic from a plastic bag in there, and then from the bottom with the fittings removed, I shoved aluminum foil up the tube and hammered it down nice and tight, and that seems to have taken care of all the air leak, or at least the worst of it. But that's just your standard sprinkler valve. The next thing I had to do was figure out a way that the valve could actually rotate a little bit. What I found was just a small piece of junk metal here, and I welded a small tab on the bottom of it, drilled a hole through it, then took an L-shaped piece of metal, drilled a hole through that, and bolted those together loosely so that this could move. And what you do, attach your sprinkler valve using a couple of big hose clamps, and as you can see, the sprinkler valve has a little bit of movement here. I forgot to mention earlier, the pivot for the skeleton is actually mounted on a small chunk of 2x4 so that it'll sit just a little bit higher than the end of the sprinkler valve. That way it's already on an angle so that when you apply the air, it's easier for it to push it up into position. Using another eye bolt is how I'm going to attach the two together. So you need to drill a hole in your broomstick for your eye bolt. Use a nut and bolt loosely put together through the two eye bolts, which will allow you to have some pivot. Here you can see there's a slight space in the spine. This should not be too visible once I use this on Halloween, because I plan on filling the coffin with fog. But I took the remainder of the skeleton and just using some screws, screwed it into place along with the feet so that it wouldn't move around every time I moved the coffin. For applying air to the skeleton, what I have here is a fill valve assembly out of an old washing machine. It's got 2 electric solenoids on it for hot and cold water. Using fittings that I got from Home Depot again, I managed to plug off one of the ports because it was leaking when I opened the other one. And then I just set the other 2 ends up so that they'll go on my air hoses with quick disconnects. And then of course you have to apply the electrical to the solenoid.